4 months, Jackson, Eli, and Devin tormented Maya Chun, turning her prosthetic leg into their personal joke, making her life a living nightmare. No one dared to stop them. She was an easy target, a quiet Asian-American girl, newly amputated, surrounded by people who looked away. They crossed the line repeatedly, and then one day, they shattered it completely. But what they didn't know was that someone had been watching. Liam Chun was Maya's twin brother and a former military cadet with a promise to protect his sister and zero tolerance for cruelty. What happened next couldn't be buried. They thought they could get away with it. But Liam wasn't going to let them. Not without making them feel the same pain they inflicted on his sister. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The hallways of Westridge Academy had never felt more hostile. Maya Chun used to navigate them effortlessly, her confident stride carrying her between classes, head high, earbuds in, mind focused on her future medical career. But that version of Maya, the track star with college scouts watching her every race, was gone. What remained moved cautiously now, her gait uneven with the prosthetic leg. She was still learning to trust after the car accident 6 months ago. Students parted around her like water around a stone, conversations dying when she approached. The pity in their eyes was almost worse than the whispers. And though no one said it aloud, Maya felt it in every averted gaze. She didn't belong in their perfect world anymore. Only Liam never made her feel that way. Her twin brother walked beside her between classes when possible, appearing at her locker between periods, keeping a watchful eye from across the courtyard when they weren't together. He didn't hover. Liam never did. But when he looked at Maya, she was still the same person, brilliant, determined, whole, even if the rest of the world saw only what was missing. They'd always been close, but since the accident that took her leg and nearly her life, that bond had transformed into something fierce and protective. Liam had been there through everything. The surgeries, the phantom pain that left her screaming at night, the first devastating fall when she tried to stand. He'd put his military academy plans on hold to transfer to her school, a decision he never discussed but Maya understood completely. The accident itself had been sudden and devastating. A rainy night, a drunk driver crossing the median, metal tearing into metal. Maya had been in the passenger seat of their parents' car, returning from a track meet where she'd broken the state record in the 800 meters. The collision had crushed her left leg beyond repair. Liam, sitting directly behind her, had escaped with minor injuries, a fact that haunted him with survivor's guilt that manifested as fierce protectiveness. "You should have gone to West Point," Maya had told him during one of her hospital stays. Watching him sleep uncomfortably in the chair beside her bed, his acceptance letter still folded in his wallet. "Don't throw away your dream for me." Liam had looked at her with those steady eyes that seemed to see through everything. "You are my dream," he'd said simply. "The rest is just geography." Most students knew better than to cross that invisible line. At least most did. There were others who saw Maya's vulnerability as an opportunity, particularly Jackson Reed and his followers, Eli and Devin. Jackson wasn't new to cruelty. He'd been the school's unofficial tormentor long before Maya's accident. The son of the school board president, he operated with a sense of untouchable privilege that had been reinforced by years of overlooked infractions. But now his focus had narrowed, his methods more calculated. It started with whispers just loud enough for her to hear. "Hop along, half girl, spare parts." They'd brush past her in the hallway, deliberately bumping her off balance. Eli once stuck his foot out as she passed, sending her sprawling across the floor, her prosthetic twisting painfully as she fell. "Oops," he'd said, smirking. "Guess you're still getting your footing." No one helped her up. No one reported it. The teachers who witnessed it called it an accident, and Maya, determined not to be a victim, said nothing to Liam. Her brother's quiet intensity had always masked something deeper, a capacity for calculated action that frightened even her sometimes. The military academy had honed that edge to something dangerous, and Maya wasn't ready to unleash it. Not yet. But each day, the silence made her smaller. The torment escalated gradually. In chemistry lab, Devin accidentally spilled acid near her prosthetic, claiming concern about whether it would melt the material. In gym class, Jackson convinced the teacher that Maya should demonstrate how her robot leg worked to the class, forcing her to explain intimate details of her disability while students snickered. Her running shoes disappeared from her locker, replaced with a single baby shoe and a note that read, "For your good foot." Each incident was carefully calibrated to fall just below the threshold of actionable bullying. Plausible deniability wrapped in cruelty. When Maya finally reported the shoe incident to her guidance counselor, she was told that without proof of who had done it, there was little the school could do. "Maybe you're being a little sensitive," the counselor suggested, not unkindly. "It's natural for students to be curious about your situation." Maya had walked out of that office with her cheeks burning and her resolve hardening. That night, she'd started a journal, documenting every incident, every witness, every teacher who looked away. She didn't show it to Liam, not yet, but the act of recording it all made her feel less powerless. The breaking point came during Spirit Week. The gymnasium was packed for the pep rally. Students pressed shoulder to shoulder on the bleachers, the air thick with excitement and the smell of floor polish. Maya sat near the front, her prosthetic leg extended slightly into the aisle for comfort. Liam had been pulled away to help with sound equipment, leaving her alone for the first time that week. She felt Jackson's presence before she saw him. A shift in the air, a ripple of nervous laughter from nearby students. He slid into the empty space beside her, Eli and Devin flanking him like shadows. "Saving this seat for your other leg?" Jackson whispered, his breath hot against her ear. Maya stared straight ahead, knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the bench. "Leave me alone." "Or what?" Eli leaned in from her other side. "You'll run and tell your psycho brother?" The principal's voice boomed through the speakers, announcing the senior class entrance. As everyone stood, cheering, Jackson made his move. His hand closed around the top of Maya's prosthetic, fingers digging into the connection point where metal met flesh. "Let's see how school spirit works with 3 legs," he hissed, and with a sharp twist, he detached the prosthetic from its socket. Pain shot through Maya's residual limb as the prosthetic came free. She gasped, grabbing for it, but Jackson was already passing it to Devin, who held it high like a trophy. Students nearby fell silent, eyes widening, but no one moved to help. "Give it back," Maya demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. Jackson's smile widened. "Make me." What happened next unfolded in terrible slow motion. Devin tossed the prosthetic to Eli, who fumbled it. The expensive carbon fiber limb clattered down the bleachers, bouncing once, twice, before landing on the gymnasium floor with a sickening crack. The socket, custom-made and irreplaceable without weeks of waiting, had shattered. Maya's world narrowed to a pinpoint of humiliation and rage. She couldn't stand, couldn't chase them, couldn't do anything but sit there as laughter rippled through the crowd. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of them. Then a different sound cut through the chaos. Footsteps, heavy and purposeful, moving against the flow of the cheering crowd. The sea of students parted, and there was Liam, his face a mask of terrifying calm as he surveyed the scene. His sister stranded on the bleachers, her prosthetic lying broken on the floor, Jackson and his friends still laughing. Liam didn't run. He didn't need to. He moved with the controlled precision he'd learned at military academy, each step measured, deliberate. The laughter died as he approached, replaced by a heavy silence that spread like smoke. He walked past the broken prosthetic without a glance. His focus was locked on Jackson, who was already backing away, the smirk fading from his face. "It was just a joke," Jackson said, raising his hands. "We were going to give it back." Liam didn't respond. He closed the distance between them in 3 steps, grabbed Jackson by the collar of his Letterman jacket, and slammed him against the wall with such force that the basketball banner above them trembled. "My sister," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper, "is not your punchline." Jackson tried to shove him away, but Liam was immovable. His military training had built him into something solid and unyielding. He drove his knee into Jackson's stomach once, hard enough to fold him in half, then let him drop to his knees, gasping. Eli lunged forward, swinging wildly. Liam sidestepped, caught his arm mid-swing, and twisted it behind his back with clinical precision. The crack of Eli's shoulder dislocating echoed through the suddenly silent gymnasium. He screamed, dropping to the floor beside Jackson. Devin backed away, hands raised. Man, I wasn't. You weren't what? Liam advanced on him, each step deliberate. Weren't laughing? Weren't holding her leg like a trophy? Weren't making her crawl? Devin turned to run, but Liam caught him by the back of his shirt, spun him around, and delivered a single, devastating punch to his solar plexus. Devin collapsed, wheezing, curled into a protective ball. The entire gymnasium was frozen in shock. No teachers had intervened. No students had moved. Phones were raised, recording everything. But no one dared to step between Liam and his targets. Liam stood in the center of the destruction he'd created, breathing evenly, his posture military straight. There was no rage in his expression, no satisfaction, just the calm certainty of someone who had fulfilled a promise. He turned away from the fallen boys and walked to where Maya's prosthetic lay broken. He picked it up gently, cradling the damaged pieces, then moved to his sister's side. Without a word, he lifted her into his arms, her weight nothing against his strength, and carried her through the parting crowd. As they reached the gymnasium doors, Vice Principal Harlow finally appeared, face flushed with anger. "Mr. Chun, stop right there." Liam paused, turned slightly. "My sister needs medical attention. What you've done is assault. The police will be called." Liam's expression didn't change. "Do what you need to do." "I did what I had to." He carried Maya out, leaving behind a gymnasium full of witnesses and 3 boys who would never look at either of them the same way again. The ride home was silent. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Liam's old Honda, the broken pieces of her prosthetic wrapped in his jacket on her lap. She stared out the window, watching the familiar streets blur past, feeling strangely hollow. "You shouldn't have done that," she finally said, her voice barely audible over the engine. Liam's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yes, I should have. They'll expel you. Probably. Your record. Doesn't matter." Maya turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time since they'd left the school. His profile was sharp against the afternoon light, jaw set, eyes focused on the road. He looked older somehow. The boy she'd grown up with hardened into something else. "Why?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Liam was quiet for a long moment. Then, without taking his eyes off the road, he said, "Do you remember what Dad told us after Mom died? About what family means?" Maya nodded. Their mother had passed when they were 12, cancer taking her quickly and cruelly. Their father, stoic and traditional, had gathered them close at the funeral and said, "Family is not just blood. It's a promise. To protect each other. To never let the other fall." "I made a promise," Liam continued. "When you were in the hospital, when they told you about your leg, when you thought your life was over. I promised I wouldn't let anyone make you feel broken." Maya's throat tightened. "I never asked you to fight my battles. You never had to. The consequences were swift and severe." Liam was suspended pending an expulsion hearing. The school cited extreme violence and disproportionate response in their official notice. Jackson, Eli, and Devin received 3-day suspensions for inappropriate behavior, a disparity that ignited immediate outrage among students who had witnessed the entire incident. Maya sat in Principal Westfield's office the following day, her temporary wheelchair a stark reminder of what had been taken from her. Her father flanked her, his face set in barely contained fury. "My daughter was assaulted," Mr. Chin said, his voice level but dangerous. "Her medical device was deliberately damaged. She was humiliated and left stranded. And you're telling me the punishment is 3 days at home?" Principal Westfield adjusted his tie nervously. "Mr. Chun, we take all incidents seriously, but your son's response was what my son should have done." Mr. Chun interrupted. "What you should have done months ago when we first reported the harassment." Maya had remained silent, watching the adults argue over consequences that wouldn't change what had happened. But when Principal Westfield suggested that perhaps she had provoked the situation, something inside her snapped. "Show them the video," she said quietly. The room fell silent. Principal Westfield blinked. "What video?" Maya pulled out her phone, opened her email, and slid it across the desk. "The one I just received from 12 different students. The one showing everything that happened yesterday and everything that's been happening for months." The principal's face paled as he watched the footage, not just of the gymnasium incident, but compilation clips of previous harassment, of teachers looking away, of Maya struggling to navigate a school that had become a battlefield. "I didn't want to be a victim," Maya said, her voice steady now. "I didn't want to cause trouble, but I'm done being silent." She pulled out her journal, the pages filled with dates, times, incidents, witnesses, a meticulous record of systematic torment that the school had ignored. "This isn't just about yesterday. This is about a pattern that you allowed to continue because it was easier than confronting it." Principal Westfield cleared his throat. "Maya, I understand you're upset, but—" "No," she cut him off, surprising herself with her boldness. "You don't understand, but you will." By that evening, the videos had spread beyond the school. Someone had uploaded them to social media with the hashtag Justice for Maya. Local news stations picked up the story, framing it as a failure of the education system to protect a disabled student. The comment sections exploded with support for the Chun siblings and condemnation of the school's handling of the situation. What Maya hadn't anticipated was how quickly the narrative would shift. By the next morning, local talk radio had begun questioning whether Liam's response had been excessive. A statement from Jackson's father, a prominent donor to the school and local political figure, painted his son as the victim of an unhinged attack by a student with military training and anger issues. "While we sympathize with Miss Chin's situation," the statement read, "nothing justifies the level of violence displayed by her brother, who sent 3 young men to the hospital with serious injuries." The school board, initially silent, released a carefully worded statement supporting the administration's handling of the situation and emphasizing their zero-tolerance policy for violence. There was no mention of the harassment Maya had endured, no acknowledgement of the broken prosthetic or the humiliation she had suffered. Liam's expulsion hearing was scheduled for the following week. Maya watched her brother move through the days leading up to it with the same quiet determination he'd always shown, but she could see the toll it was taking. His college applications were due, his future hanging in the balance, and now an expulsion would follow him forever. The night before the hearing, Maya found him sitting on the back porch, staring out at the darkness. She wheeled herself out to join him. The temporary prosthetic the hospital had provided too uncomfortable to wear for long periods. "I'm sorry," she said, breaking the silence. Liam looked at her, genuinely confused. "For what?" "For not telling you sooner. For letting it get this far. For costing you everything." He shook his head. "You didn't cost me anything." "They did. But your future is still there," he interrupted gently, "just taking a different path." Maya studied her brother's profile, wondering when he had become so much stronger than her. "I'm going to fix this," she promised. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Liam smiled, a rare sight these days. "I know you will. You always were the stubborn one." The expulsion hearing was held in the administrative conference room, a sterile space with fluorescent lighting and uncomfortable chairs. The disciplinary committee, 3 school board members, Vice Principal Harlow, and a district representative, sat on one side of a long table. Liam and his father sat on the other, with Maya positioned beside them in her wheelchair. Jackson's father sat at the far end, his expensive suit and confident posture a stark contrast to the tension radiating from the Chin family. Jackson himself was absent, still recovering from his injuries, according to his father. The proceedings began with a formal reading of the charges against Liam: assault, excessive force, disruption of school activities. The committee members avoided looking directly at Maya, as if her presence was an uncomfortable reminder of why they were really there. Vice Principal Harlow presented the school's case, describing Liam's actions in clinical detail while minimizing the provocation. While we acknowledge that there was an unfortunate incident involving Miss Chin's prosthetic device, Mr. Chin's response was disproportionate and dangerous. Maya's hands tightened on the arms of her wheelchair. Unfortunate incident felt like a slap in the face, a deliberate diminishing of what had been a calculated act of cruelty. When it was Liam's turn to speak, he stood with military precision, his voice steady. "I accept full responsibility for my actions," he began, surprising everyone in the room. "I chose to physically confront 3 students who had assaulted my sister. I chose to use the training I received at military academy to neutralize a threat to her safety and dignity. I would make the same choice again. The committee members exchanged glances. This was not the remorseful plea they had expected. Mr. Chun, one of the board members said, "Do you understand the seriousness of what you did? These boys required medical attention. Do you understand the seriousness of what they did?" Liam countered, "My sister requires a new prosthetic that costs thousands of dollars and will take weeks to fabricate. She can't walk properly until then." She was humiliated in front of the entire school. Where's their accountability? Jackson's father cleared his throat. "My son has been punished appropriately for his role in this regrettable incident. 3-day suspension is standard for a first offense of this nature." Maya couldn't contain herself any longer. "First offense," she repeated, her voice cutting through the room. "Is that what you think this was?" All eyes turned to her. She wheeled herself forward, placing her journal on the table. "This is every incident of harassment I've experienced since returning to school. Dates, times, witnesses, teachers who were informed and did nothing. This wasn't a first offense. It was just the first time they got caught on video." She pulled out her phone and placed it beside the journal. "Speaking of which, I'd like to show you something else." Before anyone could object, she played a new video, one that hadn't been shared publicly yet. It showed Jackson and his friends in the hallway a week before the gymnasium incident, planning what they would do to her at the pep rally, laughing about how hilarious it would be to see her stranded without her leg. "Where did you get that?" Jackson's father demanded, his composure cracking. "It was sent to me anonymously this morning," Maya replied calmly. "Apparently, not everyone thinks what happened to me was just an unfortunate incident." She turned to face the committee directly. "You're here to decide whether my brother should be expelled for protecting me. But the real question is why he had to protect me in the first place. Why did the school fail so completely in its duty to provide a safe environment for a disabled student? Why were 3 boys allowed to systematically torment me with no consequences? Why am I the one sitting here in a wheelchair while you debate whether my brother's actions were proportionate?" The room fell silent. Even Vice Principal Harlow seemed at a loss for words. Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. "If you expel my brother, you're sending a message that protecting the vulnerable is worse than victimizing them. You're telling every disabled student in this school that their dignity matters less than the comfort of their tormentors. Is that really the precedent you want to set?" The district representative, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "Miss Chun, while your points are compelling, they don't change the fact that your brother sent 3 students to the hospital. The district has clear policies about physical violence. And what are your policies about protecting disabled students?" Maya challenged, "Because I've read the student handbook cover to cover, and there's exactly 1 paragraph about disability accommodation and nothing about what happens when those accommodations are deliberately targeted." She gestured to her wheelchair. "This isn't just about a broken prosthetic. It's about a broken system that forced my brother to choose between watching me suffer and risking his future. No student should have to make that choice." The hearing lasted 3 more hours. Witnesses were called, students who had seen the harassment, teachers who admitted they had noticed but hadn't intervened, even the school counselor who had dismissed Maya's earlier complaints. With each testimony, the narrative shifted further from Liam's actions to the systemic failures that had preceded them. By the time the committee called for deliberation, the atmosphere in the room had transformed. Jackson's father left without a word, his earlier confidence replaced by tight-lipped anger. The Chun family waited in the hallway, Maya's hand clasped tightly in Liam's, their father standing protectively behind them. "Whatever happens," Liam whispered, "I don't regret it." Maya squeezed his hand. "Neither do I." The committee's decision, when it finally came, was unexpected. Liam would not be expelled. Instead, he would serve a 2-week suspension and complete 20 hours of community service, teaching self-defense classes to disabled students at the local community center. More surprisingly, the committee announced an immediate review of the school's policies regarding disability harassment, with Maya invited to serve as a student consultant. Jackson, Eli, and Devin would face a separate disciplinary hearing to reassess their punishment in light of the new evidence. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. As they left the administration building, a small crowd had gathered outside. Students, parents, local news crews. A girl in a wheelchair, younger than Maya, held a sign that read, "Stand with Maya." Beside her, a boy with hearing aids wore a t-shirt with hashtag Justice for Maya printed across the front. Maya hadn't expected this, hadn't realized how far her story had spread or how deeply it had resonated. She felt Liam's hand on her shoulder, steadying her as always. "You did this," he said quietly. "Not me." For the first time in months, Maya felt something like hope unfurling in her chest. Vice Principal Harlow resigned, citing personal reasons, but clearly sensing which way the wind was blowing. The videos continued to spread, reaching disability rights organizations and veterans groups who recognized Liam's military training and understood his protective instinct. They rallied around the Chun family, offering legal support and advocacy. A prominent prosthetics company reached out to Maya, offering to replace her damaged leg with their most advanced model at no cost. "It's not just about the prosthetic," the company representative explained during their meeting. "It's about sending a message that what happened to you matters, and that there are people who want to help you stand again, literally and figuratively." The new prosthetic was a marvel of engineering. Lighter, more responsive, with advanced articulation that made walking feel more natural than Maya had experienced since the accident. The company's technicians worked with her for weeks, adjusting and customizing until it felt like an extension of herself rather than a foreign attachment. When she took her first steps with it, Liam was there, his hands hovering near her waist but not touching, letting her find her balance on her own while ensuring she wouldn't fall. Their father recorded the moment, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as Maya walked the length of the physical therapy room without hesitation. "Mom would be proud," he said quietly, and both siblings knew it was true. Liam's suspension ended, but he chose not to return to Westridge Academy. Instead, he enrolled in the local community college, taking advanced courses that would transfer to a 4-year university while maintaining his ROTC training. His military academy dreams weren't abandoned, just deferred. "Some things are more important than following the original plan," he told Maya when she expressed guilt about his change path. "Sometimes the detour is the journey." 3 weeks after the incident, Maya returned to school with her new prosthetic, sleeker, more responsive, and emblazoned with a phoenix design that wrapped around the carbon fiber. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but Maya didn't care. She wanted everyone to see it, to understand what it represented. Rising from destruction, transformed by fire. Students who had once looked away now met Maya's eyes, some offering tentative smiles, others approaching with genuine apologies for their silence. The hallways that had felt hostile now opened before her, not out of fear, but respect. In the cafeteria, a freshman girl with a hearing aid stopped Maya, her hands trembling slightly. "Before you came back," she said quietly, "no one noticed when people made fun of my aid. Now they do. Now they say something." Maya smiled, understanding the true victory wasn't just her own return, but the ripples spreading outward, changing the ecosystem of the school in ways that would outlast her time there. That afternoon, she attended her first meeting as chair of the Student Advocacy Council. The room was packed, students with visible and invisible disabilities, allies who had found their voices, even teachers eager to be part of the change. As Maya called the meeting to order, she caught sight of a familiar figure standing by the door. Liam, who had come to pick her up but arrived early. He nodded once, a gesture that contained everything they'd been through and everything that lay ahead. The promise between them remained unbroken. To protect each other, to stand against cruelty, to transform pain into purpose. The broken prosthetic that had symbolized her humiliation now hung in a shadow box on the wall of the council room, beneath a simple plaque that read, "Some things must break before they can be rebuilt stronger." But the story didn't end there. As Maya's advocacy work gained attention, so did the backlash. Anonymous online accounts began posting that she had overreacted to typical teenage behavior. Jackson's father, still smarting from his son's expulsion, used his connections to plant stories questioning whether the incident had been blown out of proportion by overzealous disability activists. The narrative shifted subtly in certain circles. Liam was portrayed as unstable, his military training framed as dangerous rather than disciplined. Maya was described as playing the victim to advance a political agenda. Their father was characterized as an aggressive immigrant, pushing an anti-American perspective. The comment sections beneath news articles filled with increasingly hostile rhetoric. Maya received messages telling her to stop whining and be grateful she had a prosthetic at all. Some suggested she had orchestrated the whole incident for attention. For the first time since the gymnasium confrontation, Maya felt her resolve wavering. She sat at her desk one evening, scrolling through the latest round of vitriol, her chest tight with a familiar anxiety. "Maybe they're right," she said when Liam found her there, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe I did make it bigger than it needed to be." Liam took the phone from her hands and set it face down on the desk. "They're not right," he said firmly. "They're just loud." "But what if?" "No," he interrupted. "This is what they want. They want you to doubt yourself, to question whether what happened to you was really that bad. It's how they maintain control." He crouched beside her chair, meeting her eyes directly. "Remember what you told the disciplinary committee about sending a message to every disabled student? That wasn't just words, Maya. That was the truth." Maya wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. "I know. It's just harder than I thought it would be." "It always is," Liam agreed. "But you're not doing it alone." The next morning, Maya made a decision. Instead of hiding from the backlash, she would confront it directly. She drafted a statement, reviewed it with her advocacy council, and posted it across all her social media platforms. To those questioning whether what happened to me was that bad, yes, it was. Having my prosthetic forcibly removed and broken wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an assault on my dignity, my independence, and my right to exist in public space without fear. I won't apologize for demanding accountability, and I won't be silenced by those who find my advocacy inconvenient. This was never just about me. It's about every disabled person who has been told to accept mistreatment as the price of inclusion. We deserve better, and I won't stop until we get it. The statement went viral, shared by disability rights organizations, celebrities with disabled family members, and thousands of ordinary people who recognized the truth in her words. For every negative comment, there were now dozens of supportive ones. The tide was turning. 6 months after the incident, Maya was invited to speak at a national conference on educational equity. Standing at the podium, her Phoenix prosthetic gleaming under the lights, she addressed an audience of educators, administrators, and policymakers. "What happened to me wasn't unique," she told them. "What was unique was that someone finally did something about it. The question isn't whether you have students suffering in silence. You do. The question is what you're going to do before it takes someone like my brother to show you what courage looks like." As she spoke, her phone buzzed with notifications. More schools adopting the Chun protocol for disability protection. More students finding their voices. More siblings making promises to stand against cruelty no matter the cost. In the audience, Liam watched with quiet pride. His military academy dreams hadn't died. They'd evolved. He'd received a special admission to West Point for the following year, his application strengthened rather than weakened by the incident. The academy had recognized what Westridge had not, that his actions demonstrated not a lack of discipline, but a profound moral courage. The video of that day in the gymnasium had been viewed millions of times, but it was no longer just about 3 boys who tormented a girl with a prosthetic leg. It had become something larger, a testament to the power of standing up, speaking out, and refusing to let anyone be diminished by the cruelty of others. A year after the incident, Maya stood on a different stage, this time at her high school graduation. As valedictorian, she had the final word, a position that would have seemed impossible during those dark days when she first returned to school with her prosthetic. Looking out at the sea of faces, classmates who had witnessed her lowest moment and her strongest stand, teachers who had failed her and those who had learned from that failure, parents who had supported her and those who had doubted her, she felt a strange sense of completion. "We're taught that high school is preparation for the real world," she began. "But the truth is, it is the real world. The choices we make here, to speak up or stay silent, to protect or to harm, to rebuild or to destroy, those aren't practice runs. They're who we are." Her eyes found Liam in the audience, now in his West Point uniform, home on leave to see her graduate. Beside him sat their father, older now, but standing straighter than he had in years, pride evident in every line of his face. A wise person once told me that family is a promise, Maya continued. I've learned that community can be that promise too, a commitment to protect each other, to never let each other fall, to rebuild what breaks. That's the legacy I hope we leave here. Not just that we survived, but that we made surviving easier for those who come after us. As she stepped away from the podium, the applause wasn't just for her speech or her academic achievements. It was recognition of a journey that had transformed not just Maya, but the entire school. A testament to the power of an unbreakable promise and the courage to keep it, no matter the cost. And for Maya and Liam Chun, that was a legacy worth building, a promise worth keeping, a story worth telling. Not because it ended with justice, but because it began with love.